Hello and welcome back to the Women's Football Chat. Today we're here to talk all things Conti Cup Final. This Sunday it is Arsenal versus Chelsea in the Conti Cup Final. I'm very excited for it. I presume you are as well, Harry?
Yes, very excited. Our first final of the season. It is going to be a very, very good game. It feels like, obviously, Chelsea want revenge for last year. Arsenal are formidable when it comes to the League Cup, so it's going to be another really, really good game.
Yeah, we did this before the City-Chelsea game because that was very important. That was a very important match of this season. We're going to lay out the context going into this final. We're going to talk about some tactics. We're going to talk about who's going to start for both sides. And we're going to get in some predictions to finish up. So let's start by talking, actually, and reflecting a couple from just a week ago, a week and a half ago now, on that Arsenal-Chelsea match. Because these two sides met in the WSL, and I think that's going to have a huge impact on this game.
Yeah, that was a damning result for Arsenal, and I think it is, as you say, going to have some consequences onto this final. It is going to be very hard, just from the mental point of view, to get yourself prepared for a final when you know you got battered by the opposition only a couple weeks ago.
I think you can have two different trains of thought on this, because on one hand, as you say, there is that mental side of going, well, we lost them 3 weeks ago, or well, not even that, 2 weeks ago, so what's saying this isn't going to be another difficult game? I think there's a much different mindset, much different train of thought, though, that says, you know what, we lost to this side a couple of weeks ago. Now we're even more desperate to win. Now we're even more motivated to come and claim this victory. And actually, I think you learn more from losing than you do from winning. So from a tactical point of view, from Idavar's point of view, he really learned a lot from that game that he will win in this game. Whereas for Emma Hayes, it's very much keep it the same. Don't do anything. So she'll have to react to Idavar. Idavar presumably will change something up, or he's pretty much admitting to a defeat. So we'll be interested to see how they both shape up tactically.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair to Arsenal, that game was a mental flurry from Chelsea where Arsenal capitulated, Chelsea scored loads of goals that kind of ended that game. But I think from that point, especially in the second half, obviously Blackstenius got a goal towards the end, but in that second half,
own goal, but
in that second half, it was better, much better from Arsenal. It was actually a competitive game, and they know if they can do that across two halves, they're going to give Chelsea a really good game here. It is just about not allowing whatever happened in that first half to happen. And obviously, on the flip side, you look back to the start of the season, Arsenal did exactly the same thing to Chelsea. So, basically, they've both battered each other this year. Chelsea want revenge for last year. It's going to be a really, really exciting game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think, though, that the second half, on that game, you say the second half was very even. I think a lot of that is Chelsea did let their foot off the gas a little bit, did slow that game down a bit. I also think that it'll be what we've noticed from, or what you see from Jonas Eidevall, is very good at reacting in games that they're losing. If they're a goal down or they're level, he's very good at reacting to that. He's not so good at holding on to a victory. So actually, Arsenal starting slower isn't the worst thing in the world, as long as it's not getting out of hand. If they go 3-0 down, they put the final out of reach. But starting slowly isn't always terrible for Arsenal, because they've got impact off the bench, and Eidevall's got the ability to change things in the moment in order to have an impact. I do think that if they go 1-0 up in the first half, that's going to be a very difficult second half, because Hayes can equally change things, has that star power on the bench, and that could be a very, very different final. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I certainly don't think it's going to be over at half time. It could be 3-0. That's a lot's going to happen in that second half. So I think for that, it will be a very, very exciting game. We've got two sides here who've played very well whenever they've met each other at home this season. This will be at a neutral ground, and what impact that will have remains to be seen, because, you know, you look at Chelsea battered Arsenal at the Bridge, Arsenal battered Chelsea at the Emirates, but you could make a very strong argument that the home advantage in both those occasions played a very strong... It was an advantage, which will not be realised at the Molineux. So this will level out the playing field a little bit more, and it'll be very interesting to see who comes out on top as a result. Let's look at the route to the final, because I think it's very important to look at how the teams got here, understand the context of the final. Now, Chelsea's a lot easier to do, because Chelsea didn't play in the group stage. As they qualified for the Champions League. They didn't have to play in the group stage in order to manage fixtures a bit more, and got automatic passage into the quarterfinals. Now, debate how controversial that is and whether that should be all you want, but that is what happened. They then had Sunderland, which they won comfortably 5-0, and drew Man City. In a very tight affair, they won 1-0 and passed through to the final. Quite a nice run for Chelsea, admittedly, getting Sunderland in the quarters and not having to play in the group stage. City, though, was the toughest opponent they could have got in that semi-final. So that was a very difficult match. They got through that. They beat City. Surely now they can beat Arsenal.
Yeah, definitely so. Arsenal, obviously, had to go the harder route. Very, very strong group stage. Wasn't perfect with a draw in there, but pretty
They got
strong.
quite a nice group, though.
Yeah.
They had Tottenham in there, which is another WSL opposition. They only finished a point ahead of them. Then they had Southampton, Bristol City, and Reading. Now, I think that is quite a nice group. You've got
nice group.
Bristol City, who are WSL, but aren't great. Let's be honest. I mean, the fact they finished on 2 points and Southampton had 5 speaks volumes about the quality at those respective sides. And actually, Southampton could well come up. Might not. Might be stuck in the WSL again, which in the Championship, sorry, which is a shame. But that's the problem with only having one promotion relegation spot. So I think that Arsenal had quite a nice group there. Where they were able to pass through quite nicely.
And semis were nice as well.
London City Lionesses, that's a lovely tie. That was quite easy to get through. And an Aston Villa side at the moment who aren't posing much of a threat to anybody, that was quite a comfortable victory. And they find themselves here in the final this Sunday. So, yeah, I think we're in a very interesting position right now heading into this game, given the context of the season so far, given that Arsenal don't have anything to lose, Chelsea have a lot to lose in a sense. Chelsea have so many more fixtures at the moment, so much more congestion. Chelsea will have played on the Sunday and then have to play again on the Wednesday and then again on the Sunday. So they've had that build-up of fixtures now. And that all those sorts of things can have that little impact on it. The fact that Chelsea players will be that slight bit more fatigued, will have had to travel in the week, or play at home in the week and then travel to Molineux. That just adds a little bit more, even if it's just psychological, that's a little bit more to the game.
Yeah, and this is a massive game for both sides. And I think it's much bigger than last year because you have Arsenal, who this is their only chance of silverware now. I think the league title's gone and they're already out of the FA Cup. This is Arsenal's only chance to win a trophy this year. And if they don't, a trophyless season for that Arsenal side is criminal. Because it is so strong, that's not good enough. And Idavow will be a bit worried, I think.
I think it'll be under pressure.
But for Chelsea, obviously, Chelsea want this quadruple in Emma Hayes' last year. Every trophy is as big as the other for Chelsea, maybe apart from the Champions League. But for that, Chelsea got a massive accomplishment they want to pull off. Arsenal desperately want to win something this year. Both sides just have that little extra incentive that maybe, perhaps in recent years, they haven't had in this final due to the fact that it's not as big of an occasion for them.
Yeah, this is Arsenal's main trophy, Chelsea's discardable one. Yeah. If Chelsea don't win the Conti Cup, Chelsea, while they'll be annoyed, I don't think that'll be a disaster.
Yeah.
If Arsenal don't win the Conti Cup, they find themselves in a position where they aren't winning a trophy this season, most likely. Unless the WSL goes very poorly for City and Chelsea, then I don't see how Arsenal get back into it. So they've got to win, really. That's the issue. They have to win. And while Chelsea also want to win, it's not such a desperation. That can work both ways. Either they're too desperate for win, or that gives them that extra bit of motivation. It's going to be very important what Idavow says during this week in the run-up to the game and in the changing rooms on that final day.
Yeah.
What he says is going to have so much impact on his players. He's got so much influence to be able to change their mindset going into the game and on the day in order to actually play a little bit better. Let's talk tactics then, and let's have a look at how both sides will line up. We expect it will probably be quite similar shapes. Probably a 4-3-3 for both sides, similar to what both teams have used throughout the season, or 4-2-3-1 in attack, 4-4-2 for Chelsea at possession, but most simply a 4-3-3. Or 4-2-3-1. I think it's what we've seen from Chelsea when they've played Arsenal, and what we saw at the Bridge quite a few times this season actually, is a real ability to use the pitch, use the width, and play very expansive football, very wide football, and find players out in those wide areas. And what I noticed particularly in that Arsenal game was they would shift the ball over to the left hand side, where you've got Gura Wright and Niamh Charles. And you have Erin Cuthbert, I think, most of the time. Is that on that left side of the pivot? It might be Leopold, so I can't remember. And then, so they'd hold on to the ball. You did from the goal kick, you distribute the ball that side, you hold on to the ball over that side, and then you slowly work it back round till you find Joanna Wright and Canna Wright in a lot of space. And that was the key problem for Arsenal. They were getting stretched and pulled out of position. Because as soon as that happens, your defensive shape is all over the wrong side of the pitch. And you've got to shuffle across, while Chelsea are progressing at speed, and that created a huge issue. Because suddenly you get Eva Perisic getting involved, you're overloading that right flank with 2 players against 1 left back, and Arsenal are astray. Now, while the manner in which Chelsea got their goals was somewhat fortuitous, Zinsberger making a bit of a hash of the Lauren James goal and 2 Nusken deflections, that didn't reflect how well Chelsea played in that game. They could have had a lot more goals in that first half that were merited rather than goals that deflect off weird angles or whatever. So I think for Arsenal, it's what Eidevall does to try and combat that. Is it, do you press them really fast and try and win that ball back before Chelsea can switch it across? Or is it having that defensive shape in a position where they can flip round and get over to the other side and stop Chelsea having that overload on that right-hand side? I think there's going to be a lot of questions for Eidevall to answer that Chelsea have posed throughout this season. And also, looking back earlier in the season, obviously Arsenal had a really good game that day and Chelsea with a lot of defensive errors. The one problem for Arsenal on that day was their rest defence. So rest defence is the players left back when your team is attacking. And actually, because they weren't strong in that phase, Chelsea transitioned so quickly to get that goal. If you remember Joanna writing Canaride's goal at the Emirates, it was in that manner. That ball was played quickly. Canaride had it on the right-hand side, and admittedly it was a bit fortunate that went in. I think Zinsberger probably could have done more about it, but that was reflective actually of Arsenal's season a lot of the time. They have been quite vulnerable on the counter in transition, so that is something they have to consider as well, and that's something I'm sure Eidevall will have worked on and will be thinking about heading into the final. So in terms of starting players, who do we think? I think there's a couple of big questions. Arsenal's front man, who's going to be up front?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think just overall selection is that these are two sides who have mixed up a lot this year, and especially Arsenal. But the difference is Eidevall's had a knack this year for getting it wrong. And Emma Hayes, well, whoever she throws out there seems to play well. But yeah, for Arsenal, he has got it wrong. I think in the Chelsea game, playing Blackstenius over Russo at Stamford Bridge was the wrong decision. So I think for me, Russo plays through the middle in this game.
Can't wait for us to decide on the night that they should have played Blackstenius.
Yes, probably.
That will happen about half time.
But I think Russo should lead the line again. Yeah. She is in these title finals. It is big game players. It is your Russos and your Meads who haven't been their 100% informed selves this year, but on their day, in a final, they will turn up and provide. Hopefully, for Arsenal's sake. I think the goalkeeper situation for Arsenal is interesting. Again, do you go Zinsberger? Do you go D'Angelo? I feel like Eidevall's got a lot more questions. Well, both teams have questions, but the difference is Eidevall has questions to whether it's right or wrong. Emma Hayes has questions to whether it's the right decision from a tactical point of view. Because Chelsea, obviously, recent weeks have been playing different players up front due to injuries. But now Maya Ramirez is back. Do you start her despite the fact she's only just cut? It's a lot of questions for both sides. It's very difficult to get it right. But the big thing is that Emma Hayes usually does get it right for these big games, and Eidevall does not.
Yeah, I agree. I want to just take it back a little bit there to the Russo point. I think for me, Russo's ability to hold up the ball is so crucial in a game and bring other players into the match. Other points of congestion. You mentioned their goalkeeper. I don't really think there's a huge difference between Zinsberg and D'Angelo. I think D'Angelo looks slightly more comfortable, but then you can look back at a mistake against Manchester United and say, well, if she does that in a game like this, that's a huge error. So I think there's a lot of question marks around who starts. On the left flank, it's another one, Lacasse or Ford. I think if it's purely based off of form, I think you've got to go Chloe Lacasse in that role. But Ford's a brilliant footballer. Yeah. So it's very tough to say in there. Then you've got Manham Little or Vivian Miedemar. Again, it's a final. Surely Miedemar's got to be there, but she's not been great recently. Kim Little's been a lot better in that role. There's so many questions for Eidevall to answer. And it'll be very intriguing to see who lines up. For Chelsea, I think a lot more of it is dictated by who plays on Wednesday. I think we'll see a bit of a rotated side for the side from the team that played against Ajax last week. I think that was very much full strength. We'll see a bit rotated in this Ajax game. I expect to see Viva Jones get a lot of minutes. Fran Kirby get a lot of minutes after come back from injury. Natalie Bjorn, is she registered now?
Don't know.
She was injured.
Yeah.
I assume in January they could register her. Just that those games in January she couldn't play. We could see her come in. If not, she may well play in the final because she hasn't played. In that Ajax game. I think she is still struggling with a bit of an injury though, so that remains to be seen as to her fitness. Again, a lot of Chelsea's selection will depend on fitness. They've had a lot of injuries and have still got a lot of injuries.
I think the thing for Chelsea, I think defensively Chelsea are pretty nailed on. We'll see Hampton in goal. I'll be very surprised if it was someone else.
I think it will be Hampton.
It will change, but there's not too many options. But pivot, it'll be whatever Emma Hayes feels like in the morning. But my guess would be Cuthbert and Leopold.
I was going to say, I expect it to be those two.
Front forward,
but Nuskin, where'd you put Nuskin in
front
that
forward
team?
are my questions, because you have, again, this is where we talk about in form or big game players. Maya Ramirez coming back, big game player, phenomenal striker, but only just back from injury. Do you start her? Do it not? Lauren James is nailed on. She's Lauren James.
I will say with Ramirez, she looked comfortable in that West Ham game. She wasn't struggling to keep up with the pace. I know she only played 30 minutes, but I don't think it's going to be too hard to get her to the hour mark at the very least and then make changes.
I think my big question, because I think LJ Ramirez probably nailed on, then I'd go kind of, does Guro Wrighton play on the left-hand side? Now, Guro Wrighton has been nowhere near her usual form and has not had a good year. But if there is one player if there's one player for Chelsea that you would have in a game like this, in a final, it has to be Guro Wrighton.
I also think while those outlying numbers don't really present themselves as incredible, and while she's not had many stand-up moments this season, I think tactically she's very useful in this team. We saw that in the meeting a couple of weeks ago between the two sides, because everything came through Canaride, but it only came through Canaride because Wrighton and Niamh Charles on that left-hand side was so good at holding the ball up and then working it back through the midfield and into Canaride. I think that there is... I think it's going to be very interesting to see whether Wrighton starts. But I think for me, she has to start. The only thing that puts her place in jeopardy is Shaka Nuskin. Because I don't know how you could justify Nuskin being benched, really.
Her goal threat's insane.
Then equally, I think Lauren James is more effective in attacking midfield than on the left flank. So there's so many questions. I think if we're talking full strength, it'll be Canaride. That's nailed. Ramirez, James, Guro Wrighton.
And I think this is the game, and I think we said this the other week, last week. This is the game where Guro Wrighton can kickstart her season and can get herself back on form for Chelsea's massive games coming towards the end of the year. If she scores on Sunday, it would be so big for her and Chelsea for the remainder of the season. It'd be like having a different player back.
Yeah.
And then obviously, so we've been through the starting 11s. You talk about that bench.
I'll just going to quickly mention with Guro, obviously you have that penalty impact as well. That's a huge thing. She is a fantastic penalty taker. I'll also say I wouldn't be surprised if we see Maya Ramirez start in the week against Ajax, and that could denote that we'll see Lauren James start up front and just in an attack midfield. That wouldn't surprise me too much, especially with James's pace being a huge problem in behind for Arsenal. But as you were saying, substitute.
Yeah, substitute benches are so strong because obviously whoever you don't pick, it's good. Like Chelsea, we didn't even mention Kat Macario as a player.
I don't think she'll start. I think she'll start Ajax, hopefully. Yeah, that'll be good to see.
You've got to have your Macarios, your Beaver Jones, your Kirbys to come off the bench. But on the flip side, you might have a Lacasse or a Ford, depending on who plays. You'll have. For Arsenal, it's harder to tell who the bench is going to be because I feel like there's more questions around selection. It's going to be whoever doesn't start.
They've changed it so much that I have no idea it's going to start.
Because if you start Blackstenius, you've got Russo's impact. If you start Russo, you've got Blackstenius' impact. We can't call the Arsenal bench, really. I feel like the Chelsea side's more nailed on. Does that benefit Arsenal? Because they kind of know the Chelsea side better, maybe?
This tells us nothing, but Arsenal against Aston Villa was Lacasse, Mann and Mead, Russo. Could you see that as the front four?
I definitely could. I feel that's a bit harsh on Kim Little, but...
Yeah, I think that front three definitely. I think they may bring Little. I wouldn't be surprised if Miedema's in there, just because it's a cup final.
I really think that would let them down massively. They haven't looked good when they've tried to play Miedema and Russo.
Yeah, not sure Miedema's fitness either because she's not featured recently and she wasn't on the bench in the Arsenal game. I do seem to remember her being coming out of international duty with a knock, so. I'm not exactly sure if she's fit anyway, so that is something to consider.
So many questions.
Yeah, I think we have tackled a lot of the questions this week. It's been I think we want to talk about the Conti Cup Final this week. There's a lot to talk about in the women's game. I know there's a huge debate at the moment going on about officiating, and maybe that's something we'll cover in a couple of weeks' time because there was some dubious calls. But I think it's important. Final week to talk about that Conti Cup Final. If you have enjoyed, please leave a like. And of course, if you're new around here, please do subscribe. The growth, especially in this month, has been absolutely incredible. But throughout this year, it's been brilliant. So if you guys can keep hitting that subscribe button, keeping our numbers flying, that will be brilliant. But that is everything from us today. If you want to keep watching our content, there's going to be another video on screen now where we speak about something in the WSL. I think it's a title race. Is it still on? Are Arsenal out of it? Most likely. Watch this video to find out why. But that's everything from us this week. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.